Name to someone, Loretta, for business down in Mexico.
Sundown, you better take it. If I find you been creeping round my backstairs. Sundown, better take care. If I find you been creeping round my backstairs.
Hello, everyone, and happy Wednesday. I'm Loretta Sernowski with Remax Fine Properties, and I'm here with my partner, Linda LeBlanc, who is also with Remax Fine Properties. I am the Canadian, she's the token American realtor, and this is our episode of Cactus and Canucks, where we focus on all things Canadian and American, dealing with investing, selling, buying in the United States, in particular for us with Arizona. So Lynn and I decided to partner a while ago. I've got to add her to the intro because right now it's all about me. But
I noticed that.
we'll definitely have to get some photos and clips from you from there, which I'll get. So today we have a very special guest, Allyssa. She's with Security Title Agency, and thank you, Allyssa, for helping us so much with everything that you do for us. Today, we're talking about the mystery of U.S. title companies explained, because in Canada, we do not have that.
So, Allyssa, can you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in the business, why you're in this business? It's a crazy kind of business, and whatever else you'd like to share with us.
Sure. So my name's Allyssa. I'm the Area Vice President for Security Title, Branch Manager, and Escrow Officer. So I grew up in a real estate family. I swore that I was never going to be a part of real estate. I wanted nothing to do with it. I saw the long hours that my family worked, and I just didn't have an interest in it until I got old enough to understand it, understand the moving parts, how fun it can be. You're constantly learning. So I actually started from a real estate standpoint. I was an admin at a brokerage. I then transitioned to a transaction coordinator, then to an agent, and then moved into title and escrow. So I really started my career in real estate, which makes for a better title and escrow officer because you know what the agents are doing on their end, and you know how to assist them with problem solving and reviewing contracts, that kind of thing. So I've been in title and escrow for over 4 years now. Prior to that, I was in real estate for 3. I started at a startup company for title and escrow, which made us learn very fast. I wore a lot of hats that made me good at what I do. I had to do escrow, I had to do title, I had to, be the cleaner sometimes. You just have to do whatever it takes to get it done, right? But that makes a well-rounded person. And for me to have the opportunity to speak to you today, to tell you all about title and escrow.
So I'm going to go backwards a little bit just because, as I said in the beginning, there are no title companies in Canada. We use a lawyer. So can you explain to the people who have a property for sale or people who are thinking about buying, what exactly is a title company and what do they do?
Sure. So in the United States, there's attorney states and then there's escrow states, right? So Arizona is an escrow state, which means that you do not have to be a licensed attorney in order to hold this position, which is nice. But with that being said, we have a huge portion of the company that is employed by attorneys to draft documents, to review title work, etc. So although you don't have to be a licensed attorney to be a title and escrow officer, we do have a department that handles the legal aspect of that. That's your main difference, that you're not working directly with the attorneys, you're working with the escrow officer. The title officer is really behind the scenes, just there for questions. But we essentially just follow the same exact process. You're just working through an escrow officer rather than an attorney.
Good. What do you consider your core function?
Sure. So for escrow and title are together, but they're also separate, right? So we are a escrow and title company, which means that we handle both sides. Some companies are only licensed to do escrow and then they outsource title, right? For Security Title Agency, we hold the escrow, which is the neutral third party. So we are collecting all the documents. We are reaching out to clients for earnest money. We're ordering all the payoff demands, the HOA demands, preparing the documents, doing the signings. And then our title department in turn is also researching the history of the property, seeing whether there's title liens, judgments, etc. So it's really the all-in-one. Our function in conjunction with the agents are prepping the contract, doing the negotiations, and then we are the ones that are holding the money, preparing the closing documents, recording the deeds with the county, and clearing title simultaneously.
A lot of times, sorry, Loretta, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I wanted to know, how does title insurance protect a buyer or a seller?
I was just going to ask a similar question. And to add on to that, how do you determine what the cost of that title insurance is going to be?
Good question. So to answer the second question first, in Arizona, we have filed rates. And so the filed rates protect the consumer essentially to charge per those rates. We can't just make up numbers and say, well, this person's going to pay this person's going to pay this, right? So there's filed rates. The title insurance is based off location as well as the type of property. So example, the vacant land is likely going to be less than a single family home, just because you're actually insuring the home's history as well, not just the vacant land. It also is based on price. So it's location and price. That's how you get and type of property. That's how you get your title insurance. It's based on a rate sheet that is calculated, never a made up number. There's always one thing to point out. There's always discounts that are available to clients. Make sure that if you fall underneath those discounts that you ask for it, otherwise they aren't going to offer it, right? So if you're a first-time home buyer, if you're an investor, if you are an educator, if you are a first responder, those are also opportunities to get discounted rates. So that is good to look out for there. In terms of title insurance, what does it protect? So the main thing there is it's going to protect false title claims against that property by owners or lien holders, right? So say there was something that I see often is if you have a common name as well, a lot of requirements are going to show on that title commitment because they think that it's you. That's when we do an identity statement. We confirm that it's not actually you, right? So it's title insurance as a whole is protecting your purchase. The seller pays for it, but the buyer's the one getting that insurance.
Okay. You said something interesting to me about the discounted rates, like first responder and that. Would that apply to a Canadian buyer or seller?
So if the Canadian buyer or seller falls underneath those categories, yes, there is not a discounted rate specifically for a Canadian buyer or seller.
But like, say if they're a first responder in Canada, then that rate would
Yes.
apply.
Yes.
You also mentioned FOW. It's a FOW. How are you getting these numbers? Does the state say what the title insurance is going to cost? Is that something your company makes up? Or how does that work? Because you mentioned a FOW.
The filed rates. So the company is responsible for creating their own rates. That is filed with the Arizona Department of Federal Insurance. And that is the protection of the consumer, right? This is standard for all title and escrow companies. They all have to file rates, and we have to go based on those rates. And we're audited to make sure that we are, giving those filed rates to the customers. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So Linda, I'm going to put you on the hot seat now with Allyssa too.
Sure.
So I want to talk about the different roles for a buyer and seller. Linda, I want you to speak firstly, when you're working with a buyer, talk about on the offer to purchase, what you discuss with the client about title. Is it the buyer's responsibility, etc.? You know how it is written on the offer, and then we'll dive into the seller. And then,
well, the one thing for every buyer I do is that when they do find a property, I go to the tax records and see who is listed as the owner of the property. And a lot of times you'll see it under a trust. If it's under a trust paperwork has to be given to the title company and has to be verified by the title company. Very important. An incident just came up recently that she had put it in a trust after her husband died, but she did it as a quick deed and not as a regular warranty deed. So what's ended up happening is they insisted on seeing a death certificate because she broke the chain of ownership using the quick deed instead of a warranty deed. So she had to prove that her husband was dead and he wasn't going to come up from the earth and say, half of that house is mine. So it's very important that the buyers understand that the sellers have a responsibility to making sure that their trusts are in good standing. And I often suggest outside that the seller gets the trust documents to the title company as soon as possible so that process can start and it's corrected. So that's one of the things that I tell my buyers, how important that is. And then we a lot of times we'll talk about, do they need a lawyer, as you brought up earlier, and because they're from another state or from Canada or wherever. And some of them still want to use a lawyer, but I explain to them they can do that. They have every right, but it's not necessary because our title people are just like we are. We do a lot of the legal stuff through our contracts, but we're not lawyers. But if they feel comfortable, they can always get a lawyer because the state of Arizona allows us to do this these contracts without having a degree.
correct. So when you're writing an offer, it is the buyer's choice to write on the contract who their preferred title agency is.
Actually, that's how I always treat my buyers. I never tell them they have to use a certain title company. Right. I was trained that way 20 some years ago, so that's how I still treat it. I know some agents will come back and say, you have to use a certain title company. I see that more with investors, people who are flipping because they get special rates from title companies because they're using them for all their flips.
That's true. And as a seller, I know for myself, I introduce my seller, especially Canadians, to the title agency before we put the house on the market, especially if it's a Canadian, to explain what the process is going to be like. And if they are a title company like you guys, where you are very proficient in dealing with Canadians and FERPTA and all the documentation and deadlines, then I will put that in the listing because I know that they have the file and that deal is going to have a smooth transaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very important to have a good, excellent title company assisting you through the process. Because there's so many pieces of paper. There's addendums. There's the HOA, for instance. They could have violations. There's a lot of follow-up that needs to be done. And not having a very good title company like Security Title, then you can run into some issues. And there are some fly-by-nights out there.
Yes. You made a couple good points there. In the contract, it's exactly right. It's the buyer's choice on who they use. And if they have no idea, then the agent's the one saying, hey, I've had a really good experience with so-and-so. Here's a couple that we could use, right? But they do have the ability to choose themselves and shop those rates. Number two that I wanted to mention too, it's interesting when, just like you said, Loretta, of if you have a foreign seller as well, you want to start that process prior to it even going under contract. So it's all teed up to when it goes under contract, right? It's more seamless rather than kind of having a fire drill during that contract, especially if it's a short escrow, right? You want the sellers to feel like they've been taken care of, whether it's introducing them to a CPA that can help them get a ITIN for when we have to withhold taxes. So good points there. I see your case of putting it in the listing as well, because that title company had started the process. They already have the documents. It would make it more seamless for the buyer, but the buyer also has the opportunity to choose. So it can go both ways for sure.
So
Here's another thing. Go ahead, Laura.
since we are talking of, this is directed towards Canadians, and especially Canadians that are interested in selling, can you go over the important aspects and explain in detail for the Canadian seller, if they're thinking about selling, what, first of all, they have to call Linda and I. Second, tell them exactly what we have to do when they are ready to put their house on the market, even before that.
Yes. So for security title and majority of larger title companies here in Arizona, we require a CPA to actually be involved in the transaction and prepare those tax documents on behalf of the buyer and seller. One of the biggest legal cases that we see across the board for title and escrow is foreign sellers, because they are not getting the correct documents submitted to the IRS. And then a couple years later, the IRS comes back and they say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, you owe $75,000, right? Because they aren't properly told the process of FERPTA. So on the seller side, if you're a foreign seller, then we get a CPA involved right away. If you do not already have one, we have a list of 5 or 6 CPAs that we work with often that are very versed in foreign seller law. So they will get you started with getting the foreign tax ID number. If you don't already have one, they can help you submit that application. They also help with the process of getting the IRS the correct documents. Because technically, say the seller is foreign, right? And the buyer is not foreign, the buyer still has liability in this and has to submit the correct documents to the IRS. If the seller is a US citizen and the buyer is foreign, the FERPTA situation does not apply. We don't have to withhold taxes in that situation.
Right. Yeah, I always find, even though I'm Canadian, I always find it's kind of it's almost like it's a scary thing, but it's not scary if you have the right people helping you through the paperwork. But it is very important for us to have all their ducks in a row before they start their listing process, because all the time deadlines are so important.
Yes. It can be scary, especially if you're not versed in it. When I first started working with crypto transactions, I did not like them because everyone makes such a big deal about the liability, but it's really step by step. And if you follow the steps, do it correctly, as CPA is involved, you submit docs to the IRS. It's very, very simple. You just need the right people working on your files.
Yeah, exactly. So I get asked this question a lot by Canadians because, how we hold title in Canada is much different than how we hold title in the United States. So can you explain the different ways that a Canadian can hold title? And also, if it's an older couple and they're concerned about their age, before they sell, should they be putting it in a trust? Should they putting it in their kid's name? Should they amend how they already have it?
Yeah, so actually I have a few good flyers that I'm going to give to you guys as well. So anyone that is listening to this, if they want some more information, they want good factual flyers, they can have these as resources. So first, to start out, if you are a single person, meaning you're unmarried and the home is just going in your legal name, then you essentially hold title as just that. So for example, Allyssa Tapia, a single woman, right? That would be all that I would need unless I wanted to put this in my trust or my LLC. If you are married or have multiple people on the deed, that's when it starts getting more intricate on how you can hold title. For a married couple, I typically see, Sally Smith and John Smith, husband and wife, as the number one option I see people select is as community property with right of survivorship. That right of survivorship verbiage is the key here. That avoids probate. So if the husband passed and the wife is still on title, the wife doesn't have to go through probate to prove that she has full ownership of the property. That's that right of survivorship verbiage that we want to see.
Now,
If clients,
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second, just because on the Canadian side, when you say avoid probate, does that apply to their situation in Canada?
what do you mean by that question?
So-
Does this also go into
So let's say
actions?
I'm from Vancouver and my husband and I have a property in Scottsdale, and we put it under community so that it'll avoid probate. Does that house have to go through probate in the United States or Canada or both?
Sure. So if you didn't have that right of survivorship verbiage on there, and say you just held the property as husband and wife and didn't have right of survivorship, and one of you were to pass, then yes, you would go through probate within the United States because the property is within the United States.
Okay. Good.
You'd have to refer to Canadian law to know if they would have to go through probate up there too, I would think.
Well, not the properties in the United States, so it would be, it's everything that is, it's dealt with in the United States.
Mhm. Correct.
So
Mhm.
Go ahead. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so the next options for holding title, you have joint tenants with right of survivorship or just joint tenants. We typically see that. For example, say I was going to purchase a property with my sister. We can hold title as community property that's only held for married couples, right? So I would select joint tenants with right of survivorship. You have tenants in common is another option there. Tenants in common allows you to split ownership. So say I was going to purchase a investment property with my sister and I wanted to own 75% of that property because I was putting more down and she was just going to hold 25% of the property. You can split up the percentages that you own a property.
Okay.
And then you also have the ability to do whole title as a trust or an LLC as well.
Right. And can a Canadian do that as well?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. When they get their closing statement, is there what should they be looking for when you ask them to review their documentation? What are red flags? What should they be looking for?
Sure. So when you mean closing statement, you mean the settlement statement that discloses all the fees, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, if it's no matter what, we always send it to the agents first. They review it on behalf of the client first, and then we'll send it to the client. Just in case there was any negotiations that maybe we weren't notified of prior to working up the settlement statement. So we send it to the agents. They also do a review. For clients, if it's a first-time home buyer, I like to call them and go line by line and go over those fees. I know agents typically will do this with their clients, but me personally, I want them to understand too, because I don't want them going to the signing table and then not understanding, well, why am I paying this, or where did this fee come from, right? That's the opportunity to talk about, oh, well, the HOA addendum has this box checked. That means that you pay for that fee, right? So there's columns on the settlement statement. You basically can just go row by row and look at each fee there. It can seem overwhelming or like a lot of information, but if you just read it line by line, it's very simple. We'll tell you exactly what the fee is and who is responsible for that fee.
Right. And if anyone watching is thinking about selling or buying property, then we're happy to get you a sample of a settlement statement so that we can go through it with Allyssa. So you're very clear about the costs before you actually enter into the transaction.
And actually, Loretta, when you just mentioned something about giving them a sample, that's one of the things I do with my sellers and buyers is I always show them what a contract will look like before they even purchase something or sell something, so they understand what it's going to say and ask their questions. Because otherwise what happens is they're signing off on a contract and they have a deadline to meet, because there's usually a 24-hour deadline to answer the buyer or the seller. And it's important for them to understand what's involved. I mean, just the section alone that shows all the things you're supposed to leave with the house. Well, that can be confusing to some people. So reviewing all that before is probably a really good idea. And that's just one of the things I like to do. So examples all the time.
Very, very good. Allyssa, if someone wants to reach out to you or has questions, how do they get in touch with you? And for those watching and listening, we will post this in the recording as well as on Facebook.
So email, phone call is the best way to reach me. I do have social media too, but that's not as often checked as office email, office phone number. Plus, if we have the opportunity to talk on the phone, we can really go over those questions more in depth. So I can give you guys my contact information. You can send that out. I also will send you a few flyers that explains ways to hold title. The life of an escrow is a really good flyer that I have that outlines exactly step by step for buyers or sellers on what to expect for the escrow too. I really like that one. That way there's no surprises. So I'll send that to you over so you can send those out to whoever needs them as well.
If you want to send those over to me, then we'll post them on when we post the recording. For those people who are interested in selling their property, Linda and I are very happy to help you. Can you reach out to us? My number is 480-822-9416, and Linda's is
480-236-7649. 480-236-7649.
And you'll also have our emails as well to reach out to us. Next, in our next podcast is going to be in October. Before Canadian Thanksgiving, and we're going to be talking about some things you should know before you come down here for the winter about entering the border. We're going to have an immigration consultant to answer your questions. And we got 2 important games coming up on Saturday. We're playing Calgary, and on the week after, we're playing the Bombers. So it should be an exciting couple of weeks in football. You guys know where my heart stands. Anyways, everyone, have a great rest of your week. It's about 43 degrees here in Arizona, so we're trying to stay cool. For those who speak Fahrenheit, Linda, what's that, about 100?
We're at 105 right now.
It's hot, but it's cooler than it was last week.
Yeah. Allyssa, thank you very much for all your good information that you provided to us today. Very much appreciated.
Thank
you guys.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Take care. Have a great week. Bye-bye.